Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 as well as on the web at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends at RCCA Media, who are digitally recording our conversation. You're invited to watch on RCCA Media our discussion this morning with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink, or during the month with Wood County Board Chairman Lance Plimmel. You can view these programs on River Cities Community Access Media. Tune into cable channels 3 on Solaris or Charter 985, or on the web at rccamedia.org. With that, it's time to welcome the mayor of the city of Wisconsin Rapids, Zach Vruwink, for his monthly visit with you. And our phone lines are open at 715-424-2600, pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. With that, we say good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Carl. Happy spring to you.
Happy spring. But I think you'd probably join me in urging all of our residents put off any brush burning or anything. Yeah, mm-hmm. And be careful because there's already been some big fires to the west. Mm-hmm. We don't need anything around here.
That's right.
Okay. Well, we had a very interesting bit of city history happen. In that I think it was the first time in 30-some years I've heard, or maybe ever, that a city election ended in a tie. And we ended up having to choose the winner by having a name drawn.
Mm-hmm.
People say my vote doesn't count.
Well, it certainly does in the case of a tie. It was a bit of a surprise. I think many of us were surprised, if not everyone, when they heard the results, that it was a tie. There was a recount this morning, and I didn't get the official results, and I'm not sure if they were ready, if they were completed by the time I just left City Hall. So at this point, I believe the recount was underway. Andrew Kirkpatrick, who was entitled to the option of a recount, did call for a recount, and I guess we'll see what the results of that.
We got someone online. Maybe there might be even somebody from City Hall calling in with the results of that recount. Good morning. You're on the air with Mayor Vruwink.
No, it's not City Hall, but I have a complaint.
Well, go ahead.
The city has done some work on 8th Avenue South, and there's a big section of the sidewalk that's missing. There is no barricades. There's no nothing. You could be walking along at night and just fall into where the sidewalk is missing. I know elderly people walk through there, young kids. I'd like to see it getting taken care of.
And did they also cut into the street as well?
I believe they did.
Yeah, I believe that was a water and light patch. Unfortunately, when water and light does those, they don't give the city any notice. But I will make note, 8th Avenue, that is near
421 and 431. It's right between those two houses.
I know exactly where that is. In fact, I did walking school bus there just a couple of weeks ago and saw that open and know exactly what you're talking about. I'm surprised it hasn't been resolved, and thank you for the call.
Yes, thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. Okay, that's how easy it is. 424-2600, pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. We'll get you into our studios this morning and to talk with the mayor. Yeah, that's kind of, you would think, common sense would...
Yeah, well, it's an ongoing issue that we've got with our public utility where, unfortunately, when water main breaks or when water services need to be shut off for various reasons, they have to go in and do the work. Unfortunately, they don't put up the necessary traffic control oftentimes, and it's a public safety concern. It's something that's been an ongoing issue, I can tell you, in my administration and previous administrations. It's been something that is long overdue to be fixed, and we've tried to handle it in a gentlemanly approach, and unfortunately that time is now past where things don't always get done in a gentlemanly approach.
Yeah, sometimes you got to put your foot down. Right. But like we mentioned, Mr. Koth and Mr. Kirkpatrick, I'm sure, are viewing the recount right now as we speak, and we'll find out who the winner is, the official winner, and then is that it then?
That's it, right, yeah, because there was some thought as of election night that there may be some absentee ballots that still would come in, and there weren't any absentee ballots.
All the ones, according to Shane Blazer, the city clerk, he said all the ones that were already in were from outside that district, and the ones that were from that district never got returned.
Okay, so there would have been an opportunity, sure. So Yeah, at this point, it's interesting how an election can come down to the luck of the draw. Some might say it's not democratic, but short of having a revote, how else do you just determine the results?
And also we should mention this is stipulated by state statute. As Shane mentioned, this is what the state law says has to be done in that situation. We people want to talk to you, Your Honor, this morning. Good morning. You're on the Morning Magazine with Mayor Vruwink.
Yes, I have a question. A while back, they had talk about no place or anything for the homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How about the Staples building? I'm listening on the radio, so if you have any comment as pro or con why it couldn't be put there, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the call. So the question was related to
homeless shelter.
Mm-hmm. And the possibility of the vacant Staples parcel. A couple of comments that I've been involved in. The city, as part of another effort with United Way, Connected United Way, does a point-in-time count annually.
We've talked about that on this show.
Biannually, where they will do a count of homeless, because there's a question still in many people's minds, particularly would be question of us as city leaders if we were to actually step out and formally create a place, is how many homeless are we able to quantify? It's obviously a difficult question, no question about it, but there has been a point-in-time count, which always gleans how many homeless youth or homeless adults we've got in our city boundaries. There are regional options available. The Salvation Army in City of Stevens Point is an option for folks that are homeless. The other challenge to homelessness is the fact that the definition is rather broad, in the sense that if a youth is couch surfing on somebody's couch, on friends or family members or something, they're technically defined as homeless, right? Because they don't have a permanent place of residence.
Right.
So as it relates to a specific place, I think oftentimes we jump to we need to find a place for homeless, but I think it's much more on the programmatic or on the strategy side. How do we quantify the number of homeless people living in homelessness situations, but then also how do we find them a connection to a home? It's not so much creating a shelter, more of, in my eyes, to create economic opportunity. If there's mental health issues, which is often the case, it's partnering with the health department and other social services programs that can get people the help they need, ultimately to get them some economic opportunity to be able to afford a home like those that do. So as it relates, I won't address specific to the Staples building, because I don't think that is in the approach, in my eyes, is finding a place necessarily. It's creating the programming around to support the needs of the homeless community.
In other words, we're not looking at a Band-Aid. We want to look at a solution.
Yeah.
It's the old adage, feed me give me a fish and you feed me for a day. Teach me to fish and you feed me for a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
We want to try to get permanent change, and I know talking on this program with folks from United Way and Wood County Health Department, mental health issues, finding what's causing the problem. And sometimes it's someone who's been escaped a dangerous situation. Well, then the family center can come into play. But getting people to know that there is help out there. Sometimes people don't know these services exist.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources, whether it's United Way, as you've identified. Helping Hands Gospel Mission has done some homelessness work. In fact, they were originally driving at a shelter, but as they got closer to that process, they took a step back and realized the shelter wasn't solving the problem, right? There was an institutional problem here. And so they took a step back and said the resources could have been better served by connecting them with maybe a temporary solution. Maybe it's a hotel room for a period of time, connecting them with CAP Services, North Central CAP, which is located on 8th Street behind Pizza Hut, as another resource for them. Hope's Door is a solution for some of the basic needs. Career Closet is for clothing for people to be able to take job interviews. And we obviously talked about social services or mental health services as well.
It's a matter of coordinating. There's a lot of different organizations out there that are capable of helping folks who are in need of a helping hand, but it's coordinating this. I mean, I guess that's the ultimate question. How do we go about doing this, and what is the proper role of city government in that effort?
Yeah, well, we have an obligation to provide a safe living environment for everybody, right? Regardless of their economic situation. And I think that's where, if the police department gets referrals, I know there's people that refer folks to the PD or call out a situation, this person needs help. In that case, they do provide assistance to connect them possibly first with Helping Hands Gospel Mission, because their mission is to connect them with the right resources. So there's a lot of programmatic pieces in the community. It's just awareness is a big challenge. But if somebody does identify someone as homeless, connect them. Whether it's make a referral to the police department so we can adequately serve that population. As we said, creating just a shelter, a place for them to lay their head at night, doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah, it's just curing a symptom.
That's right.
And when they wake up the next morning, they're still in the same situation that got them to the shelter in the first place.
That's correct. That's correct.
Speaking of looking forward or looking at issues, well, first off, the Common Council met as a committee of the whole on Monday to talk about, had some preliminary talk about regarding the city adopting a chronic nuisance ordinance. And there was discussion of a citywide cleanup day and an uptown rediscovered beautification initiative, as discussed by your council on beautification. And then tonight at 6 at the McMillan Memorial Library in the auditorium, there will be a public forum on downtown development. So I guess it kind of all fits into together. What's the game plan? What's the game plan here?
Yeah, there's definitely a connected strategy here. I was kind of questioning what were we going to talk about today. I knew we were going to get calls, but we didn't have a council meeting obviously last night. The way the calendar fell this month,
Your Honor, I always can find stuff to talk about.
I'm here a week late. I don't worry about that one bit, Carl. But yes, the committee of the whole of the city council met on Monday evening. There's been some kind of percolating issues or questions that people wanted to talk about. 3 of which were on the agenda on Monday night. I'll start with the Uptown Rediscovered. Alderperson Kellogg had made the referral to the committee. He had come up with a program, as he had seen in some other communities, as to how do we revitalize. There's a lot of talk about downtown beautification or downtown investment.
What about
downtown? And then what about the rest of the community? And I give him credit because, oftentimes people gravitate, and part of it is you just only have so much time and resources to concern yourself with certain subjects. But he raised a very important point of 8th Street. And it couldn't come more timely, more on a long-term view, and that is the city's look at completely rewriting its zoning code. It has not had a complete rewrite or a substantial rewrite in decades, right, since the 80s. So we're operating under old zoning. And as you look at new communities that have had a lot of redevelopment, there's a lot of landscaping requirements and ultimately a different standard that development occurs under. Today, people pave right up to the back of the sidewalk, and then you get parking over the sidewalk. I mean, it's just, you create a lot of issues, and we're dealing with those problems today. But Scott had offered more of a proactive solution to help bridge the gap between the old zoning and the new zoning. And his program was about how do we incentivize business owners. Not everybody is a CVS or a Walgreens where they've got a cookie cutter development where they're going to put in nice landscaping because most communities require it. It just so happened to be that our community didn't expect it, but they did it on their own. How do we get other business owners, local business owners that have maybe paved up to the parking or up to the sidewalk, or really didn't include any beautification or even facade? There's some property on 8th Street that may not look as good as it should, and so Scott put together his own review of the 8th Street corridor and said these are properties that are nice models and nice examples. And there's some that, are close, and there's some that are, in his estimation, subpar, that aren't nearly as aren't nearly what he'd like to see, or maybe others in the community would like to see. So he's proposed just kind of a basic starting point there that he wants to start talking with some of the business owners about including Mid-State and the school, high school students, and the Mayor's Council on Beautification on creating a program that would incentivize business owners. So it might be where local businesses just use florists, for example, or point of sale where anybody that's selling plants might want to put in planters along 8th Street, or, I'm just throwing these out as examples, but really calling out that district as needing some extra, improvement.
Okay, well, that also gets into the long-term strategy for 8th Street. One of the biggest problems that's been identified is, and this is something Representative Krug is working on, is trying to get the through traffic off of 8th Street, because right now that's crazy. I mean, especially during rush hour, you can see semis rolling through there, and they're not going 35 an hour, Your Honor. They're coming in almost, I've seen them come in from the south barreling at 45 plus, and then all of a sudden you hear a screech because they have to slow down. And you got people traveling through because they're on a state highway and they're connecting.
Yeah, a good number of that traffic is actually through traffic.
Isn't part of the ultimate solution? We have to first try and get the traffic manageable on 8th Street, and then we can start looking at, okay, how can we make this an attractive commercial district?
Well, it hasn't failed. That's the DOT definition for when traffic counts exceed what the system is intended to engineer to handle. So it hasn't. That's the first kind of test in the DOT's eyes. It is a state connecting highway. You bring up that point. Just 2 weeks ago or so, I sent a letter to the DOT because we don't have 8th Street, the Expressway, any 34, 13 North. Any of those projects are on a DOT schedule right now for replacement or reconstruction. So that's left the city with a huge maintenance obligation as it relates to the streets.
Yeah.
We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars doing pavement patching on a 30, 40-year-old stretch of road, when in fact we shouldn't be spending that much if in fact they're going to replace it. But we do need to know from them, how many more years do we have to prolong our maintenance? I mean, heck, you start spending that much money every year, at some point you've got it all replaced, and all you've done is just replace squares along the stretch. So that letter has gone off as it relates to the DOT. If anyone's paying attention to the state transportation situation, state transportation secretary called for this huge investment and a raise in gas tax and a raise in fees to afford the investment, right? If you're even talking, that's just to fund the existing system today. The governor said no, and by and large, he said no, we're not going to take the DOT secretary's recommendations or request. We're going to borrow. We're going to borrow against future sort of...
That's what we've been doing for
kicking
years.
the can, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a long-term fix because you can't keep borrowing your way out of a problem because you're going to have to pay that debt down at some point. So it's called for one of the largest increase in borrowing. So for cities like ours, that puts us on notice and a little bit scared, because if we're borrowing just to maintain the system today, not new investment, how do we even get our projects ever on the DOT's radar when, in fact, they're not funded to a level that they should be funded? So the letter has gone off. I've spoke with Representative Krug because he is working on a budget amendment to include the environmental aspect of that, as you talk about the bypass project. We're very concerned if, in fact, that's funded to any degree. What's the plan for 8th Street? We cannot be left to maintain the system on a local level because our state aids just don't help offset. I mean, our general fund, local dollars are funding a state highway and the maintenance on a state highway. And that's not appropriate.
And this is a perfect example. This is political science 101 or public administration 101. Yeah. And you're a good graduate of that program at UW-Stevens.
Right.
This is when you make stupid pledges like no tax increases or we won't, this is what you end up with.
That's right.
You end up with, we don't have enough money to do just the basic stuff. In the meantime, you have 4 seasons of crazy weather in Wisconsin, and we all know what it does to roadways.
That's right. Especially roadways that are 30, 40 years old.
Yeah, and that maintenance work, you still have to maintain it.
That's right.
The state's going to get on you if you don't. If there's big chunks of big holes on 8th Street, they're going to get on you.
Yeah. And, we're very fortunate to not have to deal with that. We've borrowed in the past. Obviously, we borrow for our street reconstruction activities in the city, and we've been able to move dollars around just to suffice the challenges on 8th Street and the Expressway and Highway 34 North, as we're going to start seeing more and more problems as that ages. But we've been, fortunate to not have to have those major issues and potholes. Those days are coming. You can drive to Milwaukee. You can see the infrastructure. I mean, it's apparent that they don't have the dollars to maintain their infrastructure there. We're just fortunate to have have the dollars to support it here.
And here's the thing. We're talking about creating a growing economy.
Right. Yeah.
and we need to create jobs. Mm-hmm. Here's a quick way it could help create a growing economy by we got probably 10 years plus of work in the state of Wisconsin, including around here, working on our infrastructure that can put people to work.
That's right.
Rebuilding stuff. Mm-hmm. And then that will create the environment so people will want to come and locate a business, because I don't know of too many business people that want to locate a new business or store on a road that's full of potholes.
You've said it. It's all a matter of political philosophy. If you make commitments and pledges to not do certain things, it really hamstrings you long term to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
And the same people that do that always talk about running government as a business. There's not a business person on the planet that would ever make a statement like, I will never increase prices.
Or defer maintenance.
Yeah. No business would ever make that statement.
Right. So, as far as the beautification or the appearance or presentation really of 8th Street is something that Scott felt deeply about, and in fact, our Mayor's Youth Council has some interest in that project, interestingly enough, as well.
How can we help? Pretty soon we got to get to our first break, but what about it's tough times for the small business community, and some of these folks are just keeping their head above water, and they're going, now you want me to spend money on my facade and everything else. I don't have it, Your Honor. So what's your response to that?
Well, the concept is very much a grassroots concept. It isn't a very hard-nosed approach that the city's going to come down and tell people they have to do these certain things, because it'd be very difficult in our current zoning code to do that. However, it's safe to say that our zoning rewrite will include certain things. Now, those things, the existing or status quo, will be grandfathered. However, triggers in change of use or a sale maybe, or other things could force the investment in the future. Case in point, Jimmy John's, is planning their opening. They had a very large unpaved parking lot. Well, we've got an ordinance, a long-standing ordinance that requires paved surfaces for parking lots. So the change in use from a gift shop and the Anderson Drapery Retail to a food service business with a drive-through triggered a change in use. So now they're forced to pave the entire the surface that people will be parking on or driving on. So that's an example of a zoning and an ordinance expectation. So very grassroots. The idea Scott's raised is maybe a rebate based on their investment. It could be we've got a private source of funding that maybe they'll offset $250 if it's a $500 project. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but any of those things are on the table. So it was an early initial conversation that Scott wanted to have with the council to get their buy-in if it was a city program.
Okay, we got to take our first break this morning. In the meantime, the phone lines are open if you'd like to talk with Mayor Vruwink. The number to call is 424-2600, pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. That gets you to the Morning Magazine here on AM 1320 and WFHR.com. As always, it's brought to you by Comfort Air.
Good morning, and welcome back to the Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
And thanks again, Jerry, and welcome back, everybody, to today's show on AM 1320 and also on the web at WFHR.com. It's our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink, and our good friends from RCCA Media are here, and you can view our discussion all month long at rccamedia.org or on your local cable channel, Solaris Channel 3 or Charter 985. And the phone lines are open at 424-2600, pound 1320 on a U.S. cellular phone. And we have a caller online, so let's get right to the phones, Your Honor. You're a popular person this morning. Good morning. You're on the Morning Magazine with Mayor Vruwink. Hello. Okay. Hello. Okay, well, we'll go to line 2. Hey, good morning. You're on the air with Mayor Vruwink.
Good morning. I just have a question. 17th Avenue has been out of commission in the intersection area since probably last October, and I believe they didn't get it paid because the weather got too cold too fast. And I was just wondering if that is on the schedule for something soon, being that is quite a through street for people on 17th Avenue there.
Yes, thanks for the question. We actually just got a call from a resident on this the other day, and you are exactly right. The weather hit before they were able to finish the project last year. It is on the front end of the schedule this year. One of the first streets projects was removing the sod and the turf for the sidewalks over at Safe Routes to School program over at Washington School. So this project is right on the heels of that. So as soon as the hot mix plant gets together, that's the asphalt mixing plant, as soon as that's up and running this spring, that'll be finished.
Great. You never realize how much you use a road until you can't use it.
Especially in one like that when there isn't a quick go-around. Thanks.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Thank you for the call. With that, let's get to our next caller. You're on the air with Mayor Vruwink. Good morning.
Good morning. Question, we missed the boat when we had 8th Street rezoned years ago, not putting in a service road. Hindsight. Now a question I have is, when will the road go across from Port Edwards on over to alleviate a lot of that traffic? I'll listen on the air. Thank you much.
Thank you. We kind of touched on that. That was what we were talking about with regard to Representative Krug, but let's talk about...
Yeah, it's not scheduled. That's the real short answer. And until the
DOT
and actually the Governor's Commission that decides big capital projects like this
meets. Is that still called the Transportation Projects Commission?
It is, and they have not met. They have not met for, I don't think the Governor ever called a meeting of that commission since he's been in office. So they very much avoided, I think it's safe to say, any conversations regarding new capital projects such as this one. Representative Krug is asking to be appointed to that. In my last conversation with him just over a week ago, he had indicated he is hoping to get appointed to the commission in which he then can nudge the governor to meet on that commission. So one of the steps in the process, though, for any new infrastructure projects like this is an environmental assessment, so the impact statement. And once that impact statement gets enumerated in the budget, which it's short of $1 million for that environmental impact statement to be completed for the entire system, they can then make the case or the argument for that bypass. I've told Representative Krug I'm very much in a phased approach. I'm not going to be out there championing for the bridge to Port Edwards because unless it's a state project, to put it on the local taxpayers to fund that would be a crazy amount of crazy expense and expectation. It's a state obligation. It's a state highway, and for the locals to have to pick up a large share of that just isn't appropriate. However, I'm in favor of the first phase being the extension from Home Depot down to the present 8th Street, just south of the Quick Trip and Tractor Supply Store. And that would alleviate a lot of that through business district truck traffic. Obviously, people that own businesses on 8th Street are concerned about the traffic. Well, I think they'll be relieved to know that traffic isn't stopping at their businesses today. It's through traffic, and it's creating people to avoid it. I personally avoid 8th Street at all costs.
I do too. I'm going to be in.
I won't support businesses as a result just because I'm not driving on the corridor.
Yeah, a lot of folks here in this office, try and get around, especially during rush hours, because it's just dangerous. And I feel for those business people, but that stuff going by you, it's zipping by.
Yeah.
It doesn't even know you exist.
That's right.
And if we can get it to where it's locals getting back on there and where people feel safe, then I can cross 8th Street without ending up in a T-bone.
Yeah,
but I'm glad that caller called and brought that up. Let's talk a little bit of what you're looking for at this, or what you're looking for at this public forum tonight. Again, if you missed it, the Common Council of Wisconsin Rapids may attend a public forum, according to the public meeting notice, on downtown development. It's hosted by the City of Wisconsin Rapids. The forum is being held tonight at 6 at the McMillan Memorial Library at 490 East Grand Avenue in Wisconsin Rapids. You all know where that is, right across from Hotel Media in their auditorium. What kind of input are you looking for?
So the public forum's intent was, there's actually been a surge of property sales and interest in the downtown area in the last 5 years and even in the last 6-7 years. If you were to take a look at the property sales that have occurred even in the last couple of years, and then you add a couple more years to it, there's a tremendous amount of property that's changed hands. And as a result of that, it's important for those property owners to know that the city plans exist to future uses and future development. And we've planned, and the only reason you plan is to ultimately do something with those plans, or at least the hope that you will. So we want to re-educate property owners and the community about the past planning efforts that have occurred. So that's the first intent. The intent of the public forum and the invitation was sent specifically to commercial property owners. And I don't recall, in talking with city staff and others, that there's been an opportunity where just property owners have been invited to come and to network with their peers and neighbors that own property in ways that they haven't maybe done so before informally. So we created the opportunity for property owners in the downtown TIF district. That's the number 7 district, which has some interesting boundaries, but by and large, it's West Grand Avenue, the Riverview Expressway to the west, just across from the Rapids Mall, and some parcels right up there, across the river to not quite to Hotel Meade, just by the post office there. There's a boundary there to the east, and then up by just south of RCH, but including the Foundry to the north. So that's the TIF district, originally put into place in 2006 with the intent to capture any increment, so any new development that occurs, to fund things like infrastructure projects. So whether it's new streets, whether it's new streetscape, whether it's programming, to bring people to the waterfront. So that was created back in 2006. The clock has been ticking ever since. It's only in inception for 20-some years, so it'll be coming off in 2016, I believe, 2026, sorry. We're almost 2016. But over that period of time, the hope is to capture that increment. So this meeting tonight, as a result of all the interest that has occurred in the downtown TIF district, is to pull property owners together to share and educate the city plans, but also to lead by example. The city has started acquiring property in the across from the courthouse, for example. The city owns a lot of empty parking lots throughout the downtown, which obviously served a purpose previously when employment in the downtown was very strong between the River Block and the paper mill and other buildings that housed a lot of employees. So things are different today. However, it's important and I would say critical for the city to call and to lead the discussion amongst the property owners. What's people's intent with property? What have they invested in? Why did they invest in the downtown? What do they see as the hurdles to realizing their own investment and own value in their property? And so we'll have property owners have the opportunity at the tail end of the forum to share answers to those questions.
Okay, because that leads into the next big rebuild, if you will, or reconstruction downtown is on the east side of we did the west side,
right?
But now we are looking at the east side.
Correct.
East Grand Avenue has needs.
Right.
And so I guess this would tie in nicely with that. If we're going to be rebuilding, what should it look like? What kind of a look do we want the east side of the river to have?
So it's very much, would be a later step down to that detail.
Yeah, sure.
However, to get people aware that, because there's a lot of rumor flying around. It blows my mind how much rumor flies around.
I call this town Rumor Rapids sometimes because people love to throw rumors.
Yeah. The project isn't going to happen until 2019. Yes, a roundabout has been talked about, but a roundabout has not been designed. So the extent that a roundabout is going by the Shell and the former Chamois car wash or by the library, yes, it's been talked about, but it has not been designed. So when people say, oh, Domino's is moving because, that's not true. It's just purely not true.
Okay. How do you fight stuff like? Well, I don't know why it is in this town.
Education. The city has to do a better job of educating. I'm on the radio show. We've got a certain number of listeners only on the radio show. My approach has been I got to take it to community access. I've got to educate people there. We've got to do more of these public forums to keep property owners. The more people that are informed with the facts, the less rumor. It's just as simple as that.
Okay. And we'll do our best to let you know. And if you hear a rumor, and when the mayor is on here, give us a call and go, I heard this. Is this true? Chances are it isn't, but at least we can get rid of it.
I don't have all the answers, but I've got a few of the answers.
Okay. We can tell you about something that's not rumor. The mayor, during the break, did check on the recount, and it's still going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they haven't completed it.
Yeah, so it's a long process, so be patient, everybody, in the 5th District. Again, if you didn't vote in the 5th District and you're upset about the outcome, well, look in the mirror.
Yes.
You need to. That's why you need to vote. That's why we. But as we look at all of these issues, and it's the zoning in the city, Here's my question. We have a lot of things on the books. State government has a lot of rules and regulations on the books.
Right.
We put new rules and regulations on. We never realize that there's maybe already one that's covering the same thing, and we don't take it off, or we don't. That's what drives business people crazy.
Well, and it's on the business people to bring those things forward, right? If there's a regulation that's cumbersome, they have a voice. They have a vote, by way of the owners or the individual citizens that represent or make up the company. So they can't underestimate just the basic power that they have as a citizen outside of their business operations. But as far as, the other two issues that were talked about on Monday night related to chronic nuisance ordinance,
Right.
We recognize that there's certain standards that keep a community desirable and keep a community livable and attractive to people, whether they're living here today or people that might be looking for jobs that are sitting vacant today, job openings today in the city. That if we don't deal with certain standards and affirm certain standards for our community, we're going to continue to get things like chronic issues. And I made the referral to the Committee of the Whole on Monday to have that discussion. Many cities, the Fox Valley and Neenah and Wausau and you name, communities all around the state, all have what they call a chronic nuisance ordinance. And that's really the chronic offenders. And we all know what chronic means. It's the worst of the worst. And unfortunately, landowner or property owners, maybe landlords, business owners sometimes get a bad rap because of a couple bad ones, right? There's only a couple bad apples that spoil the rest. Well, here's a prime example. So the police department and the code enforcement department wrote me a joint memo indicating that there are a lot of calls that are repeat offenders, requiring multiple calls in a day, maybe multiple calls in a week.
What are the types of complaints? What are the complaints about?
Well, some might be property disturbances, right, or issues related to code. Some might be tied in with liquor licensing. That there's been numerous calls for service. Well, ultimately, those calls cost somebody some money. It's costing all of us as taxpayers, either we're residential property owners or we're business owners, all paying property taxes. Well, how do we fund our operations? Well, 42% is by property taxes. So if you have a demand for service in the fire department or the police department or in code enforcement, for example, we're all paying for those increased number of calls. So the intent of the code enforcement or the chronic nuisance ordinance that was just talked very preliminarily is how do we address some of these chronic issues in an ordinance form. So it's not coming down with a hammer sooner. It's just having a recourse or a system in place that when it gets to a certain degree of severity, we have a hammer. And the ordinance prescribes some of that today, but it doesn't prescribe enough of it. So if if we're going out inspecting a home, let's say there's a dispute. The police department's being called regularly to a certain residence.
There's vehicles everywhere parked.
Or civil disturbances, right? If there's issues going on in the home, at some point you got to draw the line. When is enough? And the officers, I give them credit for bringing this forward in some way, shape, or form, because they've said, you know what, we've gone to this place every day or every week or every month, and unfortunately it's just a chronic situation. And the only way to fix that is to enact some teeth. And
I can see from a law enforcement perspective, it could become potentially a dangerous situation. If you're going to a property that's got civil disturbances all the time, sometimes those become real ugly.
Yeah, especially when there's children involved, right?
Yeah.
And, if we're trying to promote, one of the most healthy communities in the state, we can't do so when we've got such a chronic situation on our hands. So it's in its early stages. The city staff now are going to come back with a report. You asked, who are they, kind of what are they? I'm not at liberty to say today because I haven't seen the report, but I do know anecdotally some of the situations, and they involve both residences and businesses. So the police department and code enforcement department are going to work on a report of kind of what's the threshold. How many calls have certain addresses received for service?
We got to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more with Mayor Vruwink here on the Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and WFHR.com. Was this thinking, now the schedule for we should let people know the next Common Council will be like a 2 Common Council meeting.
Yeah, it's a reorganizational meeting. That's at the meeting where I will select council members for the various committees that they will sit on, the standing committees, the the Finance and Property, the Public Works, and the HR committee. As it stands, we have one new member joining us with Kirkpatrick. With the election that happened just recently, Kirkpatrick will be stepping off as a result of that election that we've talked about earlier in the show. And then the new council will reorganize. They'll elect a new council president at that meeting, and then they'll elect their committee chairpersons right away as well.
Okay, so that's what happens, and a lot of reorganizing. But with the new council, what's going to be your charge, or what are some of your priorities for this new legislative body?
Well, there were a number of council members that ran unopposed, so it's one of the positives of that is you get the familiarity of the members that you've been working with. So there's a continuation of the agenda. I think some of the investments and discussion we're having in the central business district. I made the comment to someone yesterday. To the extent that we spend resources marketing and promoting our Westside Industrial Park, the Woodlands Business Park, or Rapids East Commerce, we're doing the city sort of a disservice if we don't also focus on the central business district, which if you don't have thriving sort of thriving, flourishing business districts all around the city, you're never going to have a thriving economy. So we're going to see more investment and more attention in the waterfront district. Many would say it's an untapped resource, and I would 100% agree. Folks that come to this community from outside the community wonder why, in fact, are we not doing enough?
I've heard that myself from people. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a visiting business person not too long ago who said, "You got a beautiful waterfront. Why isn't anybody doing anything down there?" Well, I said, "Well, that's all part of this." And then we went into the Tribune Building discussion. Right. But he says that's an untapped opportunity, and I said, "Amen, brother."
And that's been our interest in developers. Developers have said, wow, okay, if you're seriously interested in doing this, it's going to require some investment by the city and by other entities as well, philanthropic or even state resources, as we've talked about on your show. So we've been kind of rallying the troops, if you were, to understand where those investment opportunities are.
Where are we? There was the plan, or somebody had bought where the Elks used to be.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And there was going to be the development of some type of nice restaurant.
Unfortunately, they let the liquor license go back, so there's no specific plan.
So so someone could still acquire that property.
We've got limited amount of liquor license. The property's been sold. Where the main Elks floor was, where the bar was, I guess it would be the second floor, if you will. There's the lower level, which was kind of the dance floor
and area. Meeting area.
Yeah, meeting area. The second floor has been occupied, and so has been the top floor. Luke Weiland, the attorney that was just over here, that Renaissance took all the space. He moved downtown in the former Elks building. So there's some space in there yet. There's some concern about flooding.
That's always been a concern on that building.
To the extent that you kind of flood-proof it, I think there's some opportunity there, but it's going to require, obviously, some investment. It's in the TIF, so I think, as we would say for all these projects, it takes a creative sort of package to get some of these things to pop. And I would say, and I'm appreciative to the council for their affirmation that, we don't have much of an option at this point.
There was a bit of good news not too long ago. There was an affordability index of cities across the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin Rapids was up near the top in terms of affordability.
Yes.
And a variety, I'm sure you probably saw.
Housing. It all comes back to the housing, the property tax.
How can we make use of a ranking like that to...
Well, it's got to be included in all of our marketing materials. In fact, we've got an insert that's going to happen in a site selector magazine, in the Wisconsin edition of the magazine, and that's one of the pieces we want to call out. Now, obviously, for homeowners or job seekers, that's an important piece, because you're going to spend less of your income on housing or on cost of living pieces. We're much cheaper, as many people know, than Stevens Point. We're obviously much cheaper than the urban metro areas. There's less amenities, one might say, and that's true to some extent, but some of the bones and the basic foundational pieces are here, just like every community. So, we have to use the affordability piece to our advantage, and we have, and it's going to be used again here coming soon.
I think we got another caller for you before we wrap things up. Good morning. You're on the air with Mayor Vruwink. Go right ahead.
Hey, I would just like to make one comment on the Rapid Fire Department and how how unprofessional they look when you see them out in public. They're walking around in tennis shoes, shorts, and T-shirts.
Okay.
I would just think that they would look a little more professional, if you will.
And you're saying when they're on
That's
duty.
That's all I got.
Are they on duty?
On duty, yeah. They're in the grocery store, and I saw them up to Marshfield. They were doing a transfer, and I saw them go out to accidents in shorts.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could look a little bit better than what they do.
Sure. Thanks for the feedback. I'll take you up on the suggestion to have a conversation with the chief and other appropriate parties on that.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, people like their professionals looking like professionals.
That's right. That's why one of the early pieces, I know I still joke about it today, you know, we stressed to the council members we need to professionalize the body, right? And
you had the dress code.
The governing body, it was it sends a message that whether we're elected representatives or city officials that are that are permanent and staff, that we've got to dress the part as well.
Okay. Yeah. So. Well, I'll let you do that. That's okay.
I signed up for it, Carl.
I know.
Remind myself.
Okay,
of that.
real quick. We got about a minute, so real quick, if you have a comment for the mayor.
Real quick, what's the policy of the Wisconsin Rapids Police Department? If they stop a driver for some type of a driving violation and they find out that driver isn't illegal living in this country, what is the procedure that you follow? I'll hang up and listen.
That's a big question for a quick answer. I don't have the specific answer as to what happens. My understanding is that they would be cited in other cities. We've discussed this. They would be cited for driving without a license, and that's a municipal sort of violation. I don't know the extent that they engage in any other activity. I know there's a letter and some support of other cities around the state calling for a driver's license on the state level for those that are living in this country illegally, because there's economic reasons, right? They're wanting to work, and so they're oftentimes driving to work. But that's a quick answer to your short question in a short amount of time. I'd be happy to take your call at my office as well.
Yeah, that calls for a lot more discussion.
It's an important issue, though.
It is an important issue, and maybe we'll touch on it on a future visit. But I want to thank you for your time this morning, Your Honor, and we'll talk again next month.
Thanks so much.
And with that, we'll wrap up the Morning Magazine here on AM 1320 and WFHR.com. And you're also viewing it on RCCA Media.